The rain began before sunset and never truly stopped. It moved through the mountains in long gray curtains, whispering across the ridges and soaking the black pine forests that covered the old Appalachian slopes like a burial shroud. The roads through Mercer County had always been bad, but during storms they became something else entirely, slick veins of mud curling through endless wilderness where radio stations died and headlights disappeared into fog. People who lived there learned to keep moving and never stop for strangers after dark. Elias Mercer had grown up hearing those rules. He had also spent most of his adult life trying to forget them. When the call came from the sheriff's office, he was halfway through a late shift repairing generators in Charleston. The deputy on the line sounded exhausted. "Your uncle passed 3 days ago," the man said. "We've been trying to reach you." Elias leaned back against his workbench. "Uncle Vernon? Yeah, heart failure, most likely. Coroner says natural causes." Natural causes. The phrase felt strange attached to Vernon Mercer. Vernon had spent his entire life isolated in a cabin deep in the mountains outside the nearly abandoned mining town of Black Hollow. He rarely came into town except for supplies, and whenever he did, people avoided him. Some claimed he spoke to things in the woods. Others claimed the woods spoke back. Elias had not seen him in 14 years. "There's property paperwork," the deputy continued. "You're next of kin. Somebody's gotta collect his belongings before the county condemns the place." Elias closed his eyes. He remembered Black Hollow. The smell of coal dust. The narrow roads. The forests that seemed to lean inward when night came. Most of all, he remembered what happened there when he was 12 years old. He had buried those memories carefully. Now the mountains were calling him back. "I'll come tomorrow," Elias said quietly. The deputy hesitated. "You should try to get there before dark." "Why?" Silence crackled through the phone. "Roads flood easy," the deputy finally answered. But his voice carried the weight of another reason. Elias arrived in Mercer County the following afternoon beneath a sky swollen with storm clouds. The mountains rose around him like sleeping giants. Thick fog crawled through the valleys, wrapping around dead trees and abandoned gas stations. Every mile deeper into Appalachia felt like traveling backward through time. Black Hollow appeared at the end of Route 19 without warning. The town looked worse than he remembered. Many buildings had collapsed entirely. Rusted trucks sat in weeds taller than a man. The old mining company office had burned down years ago, leaving only a black skeleton of timber and brick. Fewer than 40 people still lived there according to the last census. Most of them stared when Elias drove through. He parked outside the general store, the only business still operating. A small bell jingled overhead as he entered. The inside smelled of damp wood and cigarette smoke. An elderly woman stood behind the counter reading a paperback novel. She looked up slowly. Recognition drained the color from her face. "Lord have mercy," she whispered. "You're Evelyn's boy." Elias nodded. "It's been a long time, Mrs. Pruitt." She placed the book aside carefully. "You shouldn't have come back." He almost laughed. The same sentence had greeted him every time he visited Black Hollow as a child. "You all still saying that?" "No one says much anymore." Her eyes drifted toward the windows where rain streaked down the glass. "Not since the disappearances." A cold sensation crawled down Elias's spine. "What disappearances?" Mrs. Pruitt studied him for several seconds before answering. "3 folks gone missing this year. 2 hunters and a teenage girl. State police came around asking questions, but what?" She leaned closer. "They found pieces of one hunter near Devil's Creek." Elias felt his throat tighten. "Animal attack. That's what they called it." Outside, thunder rolled through the mountains. Mrs. Pruitt lowered her voice. "Your uncle tried warning people before he died. Said something woke up in the mines." Elias exhaled sharply. "There it is. What? The stories. Same as always." Her expression hardened. "You think those mountains are empty because you left them?" Neither spoke for a moment. Finally Elias purchased supplies and headed back toward the door. Before he stepped outside, Mrs. Pruitt called after him. "If you hear whistling tonight, don't answer it." Rain hammered the windshield as Elias drove north toward the Mercer property. The cabin sat nearly 12 miles outside town along a dirt road swallowed by dense forest. Branches scraped against his truck like fingernails. Fog thickened until visibility shrank to only a few feet. Then the engine died. The truck rolled to a stop beside a washed-out section of road. "Perfect," Elias muttered. He tried the ignition twice. Nothing. Lightning flashed overhead, illuminating the woods. For one brief instant he thought he saw someone standing among the trees. Tall, thin, watching him. Then darkness returned. Elias grabbed his flashlight and stepped into the rain. Mud sucked at his boots as he opened the hood. He spent nearly 15 minutes checking wires before realizing the problem was worse than expected. The truck was not moving tonight. His uncle's cabin lay another 2 miles ahead. He considered sleeping inside the vehicle until morning. Then he heard the whistle. Soft, distant, a single note floating through the forest. Elias froze. The sound stirred memories he had spent years suppressing. He remembered lying awake in his childhood bedroom while whistles drifted through the trees outside. He remembered his mother locking every door in the house. He remembered Uncle Vernon gripping his shoulder tightly and saying, "If you hear it call your name, don't answer." The whistle came again, closer this time. Elias shut the hood immediately. Rain poured down his face as he grabbed his bag and started walking. The forest pressed around him from every side. His flashlight beam cut through sheets of rain and revealed endless walls of wet trees. Every sound seemed amplified, the crunch of leaves beneath his boots, distant thunder, the wind moaning through branches. And beneath it all, the whistling. Sometimes far away, sometimes frighteningly close. After nearly 40 minutes, Elias finally saw the cabin. A weak porch light glowed through the storm. Relief flooded him, until he realized the light should not have been on. The sheriff's office had told him Vernon died 3 days earlier. Someone was inside. Elias approached slowly. The cabin looked ancient now, its wood warped black with age and moisture. The surrounding wood stood unnaturally still despite the storm. He climbed the porch steps. The front door hung slightly open. A terrible smell drifted from within. Rot, blood, something older. "Hello," Elias called. No response. He pushed the door inward. The cabin interior sat frozen in shadow. Furniture covered in dust. Shelves stacked with jars of cloudy liquid. Strange symbols carved into the walls. Then his flashlight found the body. Uncle Vernon sat in a rocking chair near the fireplace. Or what remained of him. The old man's chest had been split open from throat to stomach. His ribs spread outward like broken fingers. Blackened blood covered the floor beneath the chair. Elias staggered backward in horror. The coroner had called this natural causes. Someone had butchered him. A low creaking sound came from upstairs. Elias raised the flashlight toward the ceiling. Footsteps. Slow. Dragging. Something moved above him. Every instinct screamed at him to run. Instead he grabbed the fireplace poker leaning beside the wall and tightened his grip around it. The metal felt cold and damp in his trembling hands. Another creak echoed upstairs. Then silence. Elias swallowed hard and slowly stepped toward the staircase. Each wooden step groaned beneath his weight as he climbed. His flashlight beam shook across peeling wallpaper and dark stains spread along the ceiling like old water damage. Or blood. Halfway up the stairs, the smell changed. The rot became stronger, sweeter, like meat left too long in the sun. A door at the end of the hallway stood slightly open. Pale yellow light flickered from inside the room. Elias stopped breathing. He could hear something moving in there. Wet sounds. Chewing. Very slowly, he raised the poker and moved forward. The floorboards creaked beneath his boots. The sound stopped instantly. The hallway fell completely silent. Then a voice drifted from inside the room. "Elias." Uncle Vernon's voice. Weak. Painful. "Help me." Every muscle in Elias's body locked. It couldn't be Vernon. He had seen the body downstairs. Unless. The voice came again. Closer this time. "Please." Elias reached the doorway and slowly pushed it wider. The flashlight beam swept across the room. At first he saw nothing except old furniture and shadows. Then the light landed on the ceiling. Something was up there. A figure clung upside down above him like a giant insect. Its limbs bent at impossible angles. Long gray fingers dug into the wood. And it wore Uncle Vernon's face. The creature smiled. Its mouth stretched too wide, splitting the skin at the corners. Black liquid dripped from its teeth. Elias stumbled backward in horror. The thing dropped from the ceiling with a violent crack of bones. Its body hit the floor on all fours. Too long, too thin. Its arms dragged against the ground as it crawled toward him with terrifying speed. "Elias," it whispered again. Only now several other voices echoed beneath Vernon's voice. Women, children, old men, all speaking together. The flashlight slipped from Elias's hand. Darkness swallowed the hallway. The creature lunged. Elias swung the poker wildly. Metal smashed into the thing's shoulder with a sickening crunch. The creature screamed. The sound was unbearable. Not human. Like dozens of people shrieking from underwater. Elias ran. He sprinted down the hallway as the thing crashed after him. The walls shook from its movements. He could hear claws scraping wood inches behind him. He leapt down the staircase 3 steps at a time and slammed into the front door. The creature hit the stairs behind him. Fast. Too fast. Elias threw himself outside into the storm. Rain exploded across his face as he stumbled off the porch into thick mud. Behind him, the front door slowly creaked open. The thing stepped onto the porch. Lightning flashed across the mountains. For one horrible second Elias saw its true shape. Human faces bulged beneath its skin like trapped bodies trying to escape. Some moved. Some blinked. One pair of lips mouthed silent words from its stomach. The creature tilted its head unnaturally. Then it whistled. That same lonely note drifted through the storm. Only now Elias realized the sound had depth to it. Like something ancient calling from very far underground. The creature took one step off the porch. Then stopped. Its white eyes focused on the forest behind Elias. The woods had suddenly gone silent. No wind. No rain against leaves. Nothing. Even the storm seemed to pause. The creature slowly backed toward the cabin. Fear spread across its stolen face. Elias frowned. Something else was out there. A new sound emerged from the trees. Footsteps. Heavy. Slow. Crunching through wet leaves. Another flash of lightning illuminated the woods. A massive silhouette stood between the trees. Tall enough to nearly touch the lower branches. Elias could not make out its face. Only antlers. Huge twisted antlers stretching upward like dead trees. The creature on the porch began making nervous clicking noises deep in its throat. Then the silhouette moved forward. The cabin lights exploded instantly. Darkness swallowed everything. The creature shrieked. Not angrily. Terrified. Elias heard violent movement near the porch. Wood splintering. Wet tearing sounds. Then silence returned. The storm resumed all at once. Rain hammered the forest again. Thunder cracked overhead. Elias stood frozen in the mud, unable to breathe. The porch was empty now. Both creatures were gone. Only black streaks remained across the cabin walls. He backed away slowly. Then something touched his shoulder. Elias spun around screaming and raised the poker. A hand grabbed the weapon before he could swing. Easy. A man stood behind him holding a lantern. Old. Bearded. One blind white eye staring into the darkness behind Elias. I saw the lights, the stranger whispered. He glanced nervously toward the cabin. Did it speak to you? Elias could barely answer. What? What was that thing? The old man's face tightened grimly. The wrong question. Another whistle echoed faintly somewhere deep in the forest. The old man extinguished the lantern immediately. His voice dropped to a whisper. The real question is, he looked toward the trees. What scared it? The forest answered with silence. Not normal silence. This felt heavy. Alive. Elias could hear his own heartbeat pounding inside his skull as the old man slowly pulled him away from the cabin. Don't look into the trees, the stranger whispered. Why? Because sometimes it looks back. Another crack of thunder rolled across the mountains. The old man guided Elias down a narrow trail behind the cabin, moving quickly despite his age. Wet branches slapped against their faces while darkness pressed close around them. Elias finally managed to speak again. That thing killed my uncle. The old man nodded without slowing. Yes. What was it? The stranger glanced over his shoulder. Something hungry. That doesn't explain anything. No, the man replied quietly. Nothing truly explains it. The trail descended sharply through thick woods until they reached a shallow creek rushing with rainwater. The old man crossed first and motioned for Elias to follow. The moment Elias stepped into the water, a sound erupted somewhere behind them. A scream. High-pitched. Inhuman. The same creature from the cabin. It echoed through the mountains in absolute terror. Then came another sound. Heavy footsteps. Slow. Massive. Trees cracked in the distance. Elias turned instinctively toward the noise. The old man grabbed his arm hard enough to hurt. I told you not to look. Fear in the stranger's voice stopped Elias cold. The old man hurried them farther downstream until the sounds finally faded into the storm. Only then did he stop moving. They stood beneath a rocky cliffside partially hidden by hanging vines. The stranger pulled the vines aside, revealing a narrow opening in the stone. A cave. The old man lit his lantern again and motioned Elias inside. The cave extended deeper than expected. Strange symbols had been carved into the walls, many faded with age. Candles burned low in small alcoves, filling the air with smoke and herbs. Elias noticed animal bones hanging from red strings near the entrance. What is this place? Safe enough for one night. The old man removed his soaked coat and hung it beside the wall. Sit. Elias remained standing. I'm not sitting until you tell me what the hell is happening. The stranger studied him silently for several moments. Then he sighed. My name is Jeremiah Reed. The name sounded familiar. Elias frowned. Wait. You knew Vernon. Knew him most of my life. Jeremiah lowered himself onto a wooden chair near the candles. We hunted together once. Hunted what? The old man gave a tired smile. You already met one tonight. Elias stared at him in disbelief. No, I'm done with riddles. That thing upstairs, a skinwalker, Jeremiah interrupted softly. Elias blinked. That's impossible. Most truths are. Jeremiah leaned forward. But the thing wearing your uncle's face ain't the real horror in these mountains. Lightning flashed outside the cave entrance. Jeremiah's blind eye reflected the light strangely. The real horror is what hunts them. A cold sensation crawled down Elias's spine. You mean that thing in the woods? Jeremiah nodded slowly. The antlered one. The cave suddenly felt much smaller. Elias sat down carefully. What is it? The old man stared into the candle flame before answering. Long before miners came to Appalachia, before towns, before churches, something lived in these mountains. His voice dropped lower. The tribes called it the Hollow King. Thunder rumbled overhead. Jeremiah continued. It ain't an animal. Ain't a spirit neither. More like a force wearing shapes people fear. Elias remembered the silhouette between the trees. Those impossible antlers. Why did it attack the skinwalker? Jeremiah's face darkened. Territory. Silence filled the cave. Rainwater dripped steadily outside. Elias rubbed his shaking hands together. You expect me to believe monsters are fighting each other in the woods? Jeremiah looked directly at him. You saw your dead uncle crawling on the ceiling. Elias had no answer for that. The old man stood slowly and walked toward a shelf filled with old books and jars. Vernon knew this day would come, he murmured. He removed a small leather journal and handed it to Elias. The cover was stained dark with age. Elias opened it carefully. Inside were pages filled with maps, symbols, and handwritten notes. One sentence appeared repeatedly across multiple pages. It wears what it eats. Elias flipped farther, then stopped suddenly. A photograph fell from between the pages. An old black and white mining picture. Several men stood outside a tunnel entrance smiling at the camera. One of them was Vernon. Another was Jeremiah. And standing in the back row, Elias froze. The figure looked exactly like his father. His father had died before Elias was born. What is this? Jeremiah's expression became unreadable. That picture was taken in 1974. Elias stared at the photograph. That's impossible. Jeremiah slowly sat back down. Your father wasn't killed in a car accident. The cave went silent except for rain. Elias looked up sharply. What? He disappeared in these mountains. Jeremiah hesitated. Same as your uncle. A deep numbness spread through Elias's chest. My mother lied to me. She tried protecting you. From what? Jeremiah's blind eye drifted toward the cave entrance. From becoming part of this place. A whistle echoed faintly through the storm outside. Elias immediately stiffened. Jeremiah extinguished half the candles. Quiet now. The whistle came again. Closer. Then another answered it deeper in the woods. Elias realized there were multiple whistles now. Different pitches. Different distances. Jeremiah whispered something under his breath and reached beneath the table for a rifle. How many are out there? Elias whispered. The old man's face tightened grimly. Too many. Something moved outside the cave entrance. A silhouette crossed briefly through the rain. Tall. Human-shaped. Then another. Wet footsteps approached slowly through mud. Elias gripped the fireplace poker tighter. A voice drifted from outside. Soft. Broken. Jeremiah. The old man closed his eyes. No. The voice came again. Please let me in. Elias frowned. You know them. Jeremiah looked suddenly older. That voice belonged to my daughter. A long silence followed. She died 20 years ago. Something scraped against stone outside. Then another voice joined the first. Male this time. Dad. Jeremiah's hands trembled. That one's my son. The cave entrance darkened as shapes gathered outside. Elias could only make out silhouettes through the rain. Standing still. Watching. More voices began whispering together. Loved ones. Dead relatives. Children. Parents. Each voice soft and pleading. Please. We're cold. Help us. Elias felt ice spreading through his veins. The voices sounded painfully real. Then one voice whispered from outside the cave, Elias. His blood froze. His mother's voice. Exactly as he remembered it. Mom. He whispered instinctively. Jeremiah slammed the rifle butt against the floor. Don't answer them. The voices stopped immediately. Silence swallowed the cave. Then every voice outside began laughing together. Not human laughter. Wrong. Broken. Wet. The silhouettes started moving closer. Jeremiah cocked the rifle. They found us. A pale hand suddenly appeared on the cave wall beside the entrance. Long fingers. Too many joints. Then another hand emerged. And another. Something began crawling into the cave upside down across the ceiling. Elias raised the poker as the lantern light touched its face. Not one face. Many. Human skin stitched together into a shifting mass of mouths and eyes. Every mouth smiling. And from deep inside the creature came dozens of familiar voices. Jeremiah fired first. The rifle blast exploded through the cave, deafening in the enclosed darkness. The creature slammed backward off the ceiling, shrieking as black fluid splattered across the stone walls. But it did not die. It unfolded itself upright slowly, bones cracking in every direction. Too many arms. Too many faces. One mouth split open across its chest, revealing rows of jagged human teeth. Then it smiled using Elias's mother's face. "You left us alone," it whispered. Elias nearly dropped the poker. Jeremiah grabbed him violently. "Don't listen to it." The creature lunged across the cave floor with terrifying speed. Jeremiah fired again. The bullet tore through one of its heads, but another immediately pushed outward beneath the torn flesh, blinking wet white eyes. The old man cursed under his breath. "It's feeding too fast now." The creature slammed into the table, sending candles crashing across the cave. Flames spread instantly across old papers and books. Smoke filled the air. Elias swung the poker with both hands. The metal connected with the creature's jaw. A loud crack echoed. The thing screamed, and suddenly dozens of voices screamed with it. Children, women, old men. The sounds hit Elias like needles inside his skull. He staggered backward, clutching his ears. The creature saw weakness. It charged him. Jeremiah tackled Elias sideways just before claws ripped through the air where his throat had been. "Move." The old man dragged him toward a narrow tunnel deeper inside the cave. Behind them the creature slammed against the walls, crawling after them unnaturally fast. The tunnel narrowed sharply. Elias squeezed through wet stone while hearing the thing scrape behind them. Closer. Closer. Its voices echoed through the darkness. "You remember the mine. You remember the blood. You remember what your father became." Elias froze for half a second. Jeremiah shoved him forward. "Keep moving." The tunnel suddenly opened into another chamber. This one looked ancient. Not natural. Stone pillars surrounded a circular floor covered in strange symbols carved deep into the rock. Candles burned here too, though none appeared recently lit. At the center of the room stood a deep black pit. Cold air rose from it steadily. Jeremiah slammed the tunnel gate shut behind them, a rusted iron barrier hidden in the stone. A second later the creature smashed into the other side. Its limbs pushed through gaps in the bars, twisting violently. Faces squeezed between the iron. All whispering. All smiling. Elias stumbled backward in horror. "What is this place?" Jeremiah breathed heavily while loading fresh rounds into the rifle. "The old sealing chamber." "The what?" The old man pointed toward the pit. "That hole goes deeper than the mines. Deeper than these mountains." Another violent impact shook the gate. The creature screeched outside. Iron bent inward slowly beneath its strength. Jeremiah's face darkened. It shouldn't be this strong. Elias stared at the symbols surrounding the chamber floor. He recognized them. Not from the journal. From memory. A terrible memory. Fragments flashed through his mind. His mother drawing those exact symbols in blood. Vernon screaming. A tunnel collapsing. And something enormous moving beneath the earth. Elias staggered. Jeremiah noticed immediately. "You're remembering." The creature outside slammed the gate again. Metal snapped loudly. One clawed arm reached through farther this time. Jeremiah raised the rifle, then stopped. The old man stared toward the darkness below the pit. His face lost all color. "Oh no," a sound had started rising from beneath them. Slow at first. Almost too low to hear. Whispering. Hundreds of whispers together. The creature outside the gate suddenly became still. Every face on its body turned toward the pit. Fear spread across them. Real fear. Elias looked downward. Something was climbing up. The whispers grew louder. Thousands now. Different voices overlapping into one endless murmur. The cave walls began trembling. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Then a hand emerged from the darkness below. Not human. Far too large. Gray skin stretched tightly over impossibly long fingers. The hand gripped the edge of the pit slowly. Another followed. Jeremiah backed away shaking. "No, it can't wake yet." Elias stared in horror as a gigantic shape began pulling itself upward from the abyss. At first he thought it was impossibly thin. Then he realized the thing was not thin. It was starved. Its body resembled a towering human corpse stretched to unnatural proportions. Bones pushed sharply beneath pale skin. Ribcage exposed. Antlers twisted from its skull like dead trees. And where its face should have been, there was only darkness. A moving void. The skinwalker outside the gate began shrieking hysterically. It tried escaping backward through the tunnel. Too late. The antlered thing turned its empty face toward the gate. Every candle in the chamber extinguished instantly. Darkness swallowed everything. Then came the sound of tearing flesh. The skinwalker screamed. Dozens of stolen voices cried out together in agony. Elias heard bones crunching, wet ripping sounds. Then silence. A few seconds later the candles reignited on their own. The gate stood open now. Nothing remained of the creature except black blood smeared across stone. The antlered thing stood motionless beside the pit. At least 12 feet tall. Its antlers scraped the cave ceiling. And despite having no eyes, Elias knew it was staring directly at him. Jeremiah slowly lowered the rifle. The old man whispered one sentence in a trembling voice. The Hollow King. The creature tilted its head slightly. Then, for the first time, it spoke. Not aloud. Inside Elias's mind, a deep ancient voice flooded through him like freezing water. You should not have returned. Pain exploded behind Elias's eyes. He collapsed to his knees gasping. Memories burst violently through his head. His father screaming inside the mine. His mother drawing symbols in blood. Vernon dragging Elias through collapsing tunnels while something massive hunted them underground. And deep beneath it all, that voice. Waiting. Watching. The Hollow King took one slow step forward. The chamber floor cracked beneath its weight. Jeremiah suddenly dropped to one knee. Not from fear. From reverence. You were sleeping, the old man whispered. The Hollow King ignored him completely. Its attention remained fixed on Elias. Another voice echoed inside Elias's skull. This one remembers. The pit behind the creature began whispering again. Louder now. Thousands of voices rising together beneath the earth. Jeremiah's face twisted in horror. No. The old man looked toward Elias desperately. You have to leave. Right now. What is happening? Jeremiah stood shakily. The Hollow King isn't the source. Another massive crack split the chamber floor. The whispers below became deafening. The antlered creature slowly turned toward the pit. And for the first time, it seemed afraid. Something beneath the mountain was waking up. Something even the Hollow King feared. The whispers became words. Not one voice. Thousands. Layered together beneath the earth like an ocean of human suffering. Elias felt blood trickling from his nose as the sound pressed into his skull. The pit widened suddenly with a thunderous crack. Stone collapsed inward. Cold black air erupted upward carrying the stench of rot, wet soil, and something ancient buried too long beneath the mountains. Jeremiah backed away in terror. We sealed this place generations ago. The Hollow King remained motionless beside the abyss. But its antlers trembled slightly. Fear. Real fear. The thing beneath the mountain was rising. A shape moved far below the darkness. Massive. Endless. At first Elias thought he was seeing roots twisting underground. Then he realized they were limbs. Thousands of them. Long pale arms crawling over one another as something enormous pulled itself upward from beneath Appalachia. The whispers turned into screaming. Faces began appearing inside the walls of the chamber. Human faces pushing outward beneath stone like trapped bodies under thin ice. Their mouths opened together. Let us out. Elias stumbled backward. Jeremiah grabbed his arm. We have to run now. The old man dragged him toward a narrow passage behind the chamber, but the Hollow King suddenly moved. One giant hand shot outward and blocked the tunnel entrance instantly. Not attacking. Stopping them. Jeremiah stared upward in horror. The Hollow King slowly lowered its antlered skull toward Elias. Then the voice returned inside his head. It knows you. The pit exploded. A colossal mass erupted upward from the darkness below. Elias screamed. It had no true shape. Only bodies. Thousands upon thousands of human forms fused together into one endless mountain of flesh. Faces stretched from its surface screaming silently. Arms clawed outward constantly as if drowning. And at the center of the mass, a gigantic mouth slowly opened. Not horizontal. Vertical. Splitting upward through layers of flesh lined with moving teeth. The creature emerging from the abyss was larger than the chamber itself. Its body pressed against the ceiling while more of it continued crawling upward endlessly from the darkness below. Jeremiah fell to his knees sobbing prayers. The choir below, the Hollow King let out a sound Elias had never imagined possible. Not a roar. A warning. The antlered creature slammed both hands against the chamber floor. Symbols carved into the stone ignited blood red instantly. The choir below screamed. Thousands of mouths opened across its body at once. The sound shattered pillars around the chamber. Elias covered his ears as blood poured between his fingers. The Hollow King turned toward him again. Run. The command hit inside Elias's mind like thunder. Jeremiah grabbed him violently. This time the tunnel behind them had opened. The Hollow King had moved its arm. The old man dragged Elias into the passage as the chamber erupted behind them. Stone collapsed everywhere. The choir below forced itself farther upward while the Hollow King attacked it head-on. The sounds behind them became indescribable. Mountains shaking, bodies tearing, voices screaming in every direction. Elias and Jeremiah sprinted through the tunnel while dust and debris exploded around them. The cave began collapsing. Hurry! Jeremiah shouted. The old man suddenly stopped. Elias turned. Jeremiah was staring at the wall. No, at the faces inside it. Human faces pushed outward through stone whispering desperately. One belonged to Vernon, another to Claire, and another. Elias froze. His father. The face mouthed silent words. Help us. Jeremiah's breathing became uneven. They aren't dead, he whispered. The wall began moving. Flesh spread beneath the stone-like infection. Arms burst outward suddenly, grabbing Jeremiah's shoulders. The old man screamed. Elias lunged forward and pulled him free just before more hands erupted from the walls. The tunnel behind them collapsed entirely. Darkness swallowed the chamber. For one brief second Elias thought they had escaped. Then a voice echoed through the tunnels. His mother's voice. Elias. He froze instantly. Jeremiah looked terrified. No. The voice came again. Closer now. Hurry. Elias stared down the tunnel ahead. A lantern glowed faintly in the darkness. And beside it stood his mother. Alive. Smiling softly. Rainwater dripped from her coat exactly as he remembered from childhood. Elias moved forward instinctively. Jeremiah grabbed him hard. That isn't her. But Elias barely heard him. His mother reached out her hand. You have to come with me. Tears filled Elias's eyes. Mom. Jeremiah slapped him across the face. Hard. The shock broke the trance instantly. The woman down the tunnel smiled wider. Too wide. Her jaw slowly unhinged downward. Darkness spilled from her mouth like smoke. Then every tunnel wall began whispering together. We remember her too. The false image of his mother rushed toward them unnaturally fast. Jeremiah fired the rifle point blank. The thing exploded into black liquid and screaming faces. Move. They ran blindly through the collapsing tunnels. Behind them the choir below continued rising beneath the mountain. The deeper voices grew louder with every second. Not words anymore. Hunger. Pure endless hunger. Suddenly cold night air hit Elias's face. They burst from the cave entrance onto the mountainside. Rain hammered the forest once more. The entire mountain shook violently behind them. Trees bent. Stone cracked. And from somewhere deep underground came a roar so enormous it seemed to rise from the earth itself. Jeremiah turned pale. It's waking up everywhere. Lightning flashed across the mountains. For one horrifying moment Elias saw movement in distant ridges. Huge shapes moving beneath forests. Beneath the earth itself. The choir below was spreading. Then another figure emerged from the cave behind them. The Hollow King. Its pale body staggered into the storm covered in black blood. Chunks of flesh hung from its antlers. The antlered creature looked weakened now. Almost dying. Yet when it saw Elias, it stopped. The empty darkness where its face should have been shifted slowly. And somehow Elias understood what it wanted. Not to hunt him. To warn him. The Hollow King turned toward the mountains to the east. Then images flooded Elias's mind violently. Other tunnels. Other towns. Other things buried beneath Appalachia. The choir below was not trapped in one place. It never had been. Black Hollow was only one mouth breathing beneath the earth. The Hollow King spoke once more inside his skull. It will sing again. Then the creature stepped backward into the woods and vanished among the trees. Jeremiah stared after it in shock. It spared us. Elias looked toward the shaking mountains. No, he whispered. Far below them, deep beneath the storm and stone, thousands of voices suddenly began singing together. And all across Appalachia, something answered. The singing spread through the mountains like a living storm. Low at first, almost mistaken for thunder. Then louder. Voices layered over voices until the entire forest seemed to vibrate with it. Jeremiah's face drained of color. They hear each other now. Elias stared across the ridges. In the distance, lights flickered awake inside abandoned houses scattered through the valleys. Tiny glowing windows deep in places where no one had lived for decades. Then silhouettes appeared inside them. Watching. The old man grabbed Elias's arm. We need to get off this mountain. Another tremor rolled beneath their feet. Trees swayed violently. Somewhere far below came the sound of rock collapsing underground. The choir below was moving through tunnels beneath Appalachia. Searching. Hunting. And now it was awake everywhere. They hurried downhill through freezing rain while the singing echoed beneath the earth. Every few minutes Elias thought he heard whispers moving through the trees beside them. Sometimes they sounded human, sometimes not. By dawn they reached the outskirts of Black Hollow. Or what remained of it. Smoke drifted above town. Several buildings had collapsed during the night. Cracks split the roads open. Telephone poles leaned at broken angles. And people stood silently in the streets. Dozens of them, not moving, just staring upward toward the mountains. Elias slowed. Jeremiah. The old man cursed softly. Every person in town had the same expression. Blank. Listening. Then all of them slowly turned their heads toward Elias at the exact same moment. A little girl stepped forward first. Blood trickled from her nose. Her lips parted. And she began singing. The same underground melody. One by one the others joined her. Men, women, children. Their voices merged into a terrible harmony that made Elias's stomach twist. Jeremiah pulled the rifle from his shoulder. We go around. But it was too late. The townspeople began walking toward them together. Slow, stiff, like puppets pulled by invisible strings beneath the earth. The little girl smiled. Blackness moved behind her teeth. Run. The word exploded inside Elias's head. Not from the choir. From the Hollow King. The ground beneath town suddenly erupted. A massive crack tore through Main Street as black tendrils burst upward from underground. Buildings split apart instantly. The singing became screaming. People were dragged downward into the earth by dozens of pale arms erupting from the cracks. Jeremiah grabbed Elias. Move. They sprinted between collapsing houses while the town descended into chaos around them. The choir below had reached the surface. Hands clawed from beneath roads and foundations. Faces pushed outward from walls screaming silently. Entire sections of earth collapsed inward, revealing endless tunnels beneath Black Hollow. Elias heard something huge moving below them. Not one thing. Many things. The choir was spreading bodies through the tunnels like veins. A church bell suddenly rang in the distance. Once. Twice. Then stopped abruptly. Elias glanced toward the sound and froze. The old church at the edge of town stood untouched despite the destruction around it. And someone stood in the doorway. A woman holding a lantern. His mother. Jeremiah saw her too this time. Oh God. Evelyn raised one hand urgently. Hurry. Unlike before, something felt different. Real. Elias ran toward the church. The moment they crossed the doorway, the singing outside became muffled instantly. Symbols carved into the church walls glowed faintly beneath candlelight. Evelyn slammed the doors shut behind them. For several seconds nobody spoke. Elias stared at her, breathing hard. You're alive. She looked exhausted. Older than before. But real. Yes. Jeremiah stepped backward in disbelief. We buried you. You buried what it left behind. Thunder shook the church windows. Outside, the singing continued across Black Hollow. Evelyn looked toward the sound grimly. We don't have much time. Elias struggled to process everything. How are you here? I never left. She moved deeper into the church toward the altar where maps and symbols covered the floor. I stayed beneath the mountains watching the tunnels. Jeremiah frowned. You were guarding the seals. Evelyn nodded silently. Then her eyes met Elias's. But something opened them. A horrible realization spread through him. The mine. No, Evelyn whispered. Older than that. She pointed toward a symbol painted across the altar in black ash. It started when your father went below. Silence filled the church. Rain hammered the stained glass windows while distant screams echoed from town. Elias finally spoke. You said he disappeared. Evelyn's expression broke. He did. She hesitated. Then he came back. Cold spread through Elias's chest. Jeremiah lowered the rifle slowly. No. Evelyn nodded once. The thing wearing your father opened the first tunnel. Lightning illuminated the church. For one brief second Elias saw movement behind the stained glass outside. Faces. Dozens of them pressed against the windows. Watching silently, Evelyn continued. Your father found something beneath Appalachia. Something ancient enough to make even the Hollow King afraid. The choir below, Elias whispered. Her face darkened. No. The candles flickered violently. Outside, the singing suddenly stopped. Complete silence fell over Black Hollow. Even the rain seemed quieter now. Evelyn slowly looked toward the church doors. That's what the choir is afraid of. A deep sound rolled beneath the earth. Not movement. Breathing. Something unimaginably large inhaling far below the mountains. The entire church trembled. Dust drifted from the ceiling beams. Then came a knock at the front door. 3 slow knocks. Everyone froze. Another knock followed. Then a familiar voice spoke softly from outside. Evelyn. Her face went pale instantly. Elias looked at her. Who is that? She whispered only one word. Daniel. His father. The voice came again through the wood. Please open the door. Elias's blood turned to ice. He had never heard his father's voice before. Yet somehow he knew it instantly. The church windows darkened as shadows gathered outside. Jeremiah raised the rifle shakily. Evelyn stepped backward from the door. Terror filled her eyes. Not fear of death. Recognition. Then the voice outside changed. Dozens of voices layered together beneath Daniel's voice. The choir speaking through him. You buried us too deep. Something enormous shifted beneath the church. The floorboards cracked. And far below Appalachia, something ancient finally woke up completely. The church floor split open like dry bone. A deep groan rose from beneath it, not from wood or stone, but from something far older pressing upward through the earth. Elias staggered backward as cracks spidered across the altar. Candlelight flickered wildly, casting broken shadows across the walls where faces seemed to form and vanish again. Outside, Daniel's voice softened. You shouldn't have come back, Evelyn. The words were calm, almost sad. Evelyn didn't move. Her hands were trembling, but her eyes stayed fixed on the front doors. Jeremiah lifted the rifle. Whatever's out there, it's using him as a door. Another violent tremor rolled through the church. One of the stained glass windows shattered outward, rain and wind pouring in. Then the floor beneath Elias collapsed slightly, revealing darkness underneath. Not a basement, a tunnel, carved too smooth, too intentional. Something had been waiting under this church far longer than anyone alive remembered. From below came a new sound. Not singing, not whispering, listening. Elias dropped to one knee as pressure built inside his head again. But this time it wasn't voices. It was attention. Something vast had noticed him fully. The walls of the church began to bulge inward, as if the entire structure was being inhaled slowly by the earth. Evelyn finally spoke. It's awake. Jeremiah snapped his head toward her. The choir wasn't the root, she said. It was the filter. The translation. Elias struggled to breathe. What does that mean? Evelyn looked at him with something like grief. It means we never heard it correctly. Another crack tore through the floor. This time, stone didn't just split. It folded. Like something beneath it was turning over in sleep. Daniel's voice returned at the door. Closer. I tried to stop it. The doors trembled violently. Evelyn whispered, don't answer. But Elias already understood. It wasn't asking permission. It was recognition. Jeremiah stepped between them and the doors. Then what is it? He demanded. The Hollow King. The choir. What is actually down there? Evelyn's voice dropped to a whisper. The listener. The church went silent. Even the storm outside seemed to hesitate. Evelyn continued. The Hollow King was a warning system. The choir was the language it used to keep reality stable. Elias stared at her. And now, Evelyn looked at the floor cracking beneath them. Now something has learned to understand the language back. A sound rose from below. Not one voice. Not many. Something like an idea forming sound for the first time. The church doors burst inward. Daniel stood there. Or what wore him. His body looked mostly human, but wrong in subtle ways. Too still, too aligned, as if his bones had been reassembled incorrectly. His eyes were familiar. Too familiar. Elias froze. Dad. Daniel smiled gently. But his mouth didn't match the expression. I'm sorry, he said. And behind his voice, something else spoke through the same mouth. Thousands of synchronized whispers beneath it. It learned you through him. Evelyn stepped forward immediately. No. The thing in Daniel tilted its head. I learned through all of you. Jeremiah fired. The bullet hit Daniel's chest. He didn't fall. He simply looked down at the wound. Then back up. Pain is inefficient, it said softly. The wound closed instantly. Elias backed away, shaking. This isn't my father. Daniel's eyes softened slightly. No, it agreed. He stopped being necessary a long time ago. The floor beneath them rose. Not collapsing now, rising. The entire church lifted slightly as if something massive beneath it was pushing upward to meet them. Evelyn grabbed Elias's arm hard. There's only one way to close it now. Jeremiah shouted, you said that last time. Evelyn didn't look away from Elias. I lied last time. A deep rumble shook the foundation. Cracks opened in the walls. Light, impossible, wrong light, began leaking up from beneath the church. Elias felt it again. Not voices. Understanding. The listener was close enough now that thought itself felt unsafe. Daniel stepped forward one slow step. It's already complete, he said gently. We are just the echo becoming aware of itself. Jeremiah shook his head in disbelief. No, you're not real. Daniel looked at him. Neither are you in the way you think you are. The church suddenly went completely weightless for a fraction of a second. Then, everything dropped. A section of the floor vanished. Elias fell. Jeremiah grabbed him midair. Evelyn grabbed Jeremiah. All three of them hung over an opening that shouldn't exist. Below was not darkness. It was depth without structure. A vast impossible space where distant shapes moved slowly, too large to perceive fully. And in the center of it, something was opening its attention. Daniel leaned over the edge calmly. We are already inside it, he said. We always have been. Evelyn looked at Elias. Her voice was steady now. This is where it ends. Elias understood what she meant immediately. No. She tightened her grip on him. It doesn't stop. It translates. Jeremiah screamed. Then what are we supposed to do? Evelyn's eyes filled with something like final clarity. We stop being interpretable. The listener beneath them shifted. The entire abyss responded like a single living thought. Elias felt himself being read. Not watched. Read. Like ink on a page. Evelyn reached into her coat and pulled out the black stone knife again. The same one from before. But now it was cracked. Dying. She pressed it into Elias's hand. You already did it once without knowing, she whispered. Daniel's expression changed for the first time. A flicker. Concern. No, it said quietly. Evelyn smiled faintly. Yes. And then she whispered something only Elias could hear. A memory. Not a sentence. A return. Everything inside Elias snapped open. Not fear. Not panic. Clarity. He remembered what he truly was in that first descent as a child. Not a survivor. A contradiction. Something the mountain couldn't fully translate. The listener beneath them surged upward violently. The abyss began to close around them like an eye blinking. Daniel reached toward Elias, but stopped mid-motion. For the first time, uncertainty appeared in its voice. What are you? Elias looked down into the impossible depth. And instead of fear, he answered. Elias didn't speak at first. He remembered instead. Not fragments this time. Not broken flashes buried in pain. Whole memory. Complete. The mine at 12 years old. The first descent. The sound beneath the rock wasn't whistling then, it was learning him, shaping itself around his thoughts like water filling cracks. He remembered falling. Not walking. Falling through a passage that should not have existed, where stone turned soft like wet paper and light stopped meaning anything. And at the center of it, the choir below had not attacked him. It had listened. Elias tightened his grip on the black stone knife. I am what you couldn't keep. The listener beneath the church shifted violently. The entire abyss reacted like a wounded organism. Daniel staggered back for the first time. Evelyn's breath caught. Jeremiah stared at Elias like he was seeing him for the first time. The old man whispered, you're a seal. Elias didn't look away from the void. No. Another tremor shook the collapsing church. The floor beneath them cracked wider. The abyss was no longer below them, it was around them, bending space inward. Daniel's voice sharpened. That is incorrect. Elias finally understood. Not from belief. From memory. He was never meant to survive the choir. He was never meant to escape it. He was placed inside it as an error it could never resolve. Something it could not translate. Something that stayed separate. Evelyn stepped closer, voice trembling. You were never supposed to come back out. Elias nodded slowly. That's why it followed me. The listener pulsed. A soundless pressure rolled through the chamber. Then thousands of voices spoke at once. Not a seal. Not a memory. A null value. Daniel's expression finally fractured. The calm imitation broke. Something older showed through. Confusion. Evelyn tightened her grip on Jeremiah. Now, she whispered. Before it adapts. Daniel reached toward Elias again, but this time the movement was slower, hesitant, like something encountering an unsolvable equation. What are you doing to us? It asked. Elias stepped forward. Each step made the air heavier, like reality resisting his presence. I'm not doing anything, he said quietly. He lifted the knife. I'm just not participating. The listener beneath them reacted instantly. The abyss surged upward. The church dissolved at the edges, stone unraveling into dust as if being erased rather than destroyed. Jeremiah shouted. Evelyn, what is he doing? Evelyn's eyes were wet, but steady. Ending interpretation. Daniel's voice cracked for the first time. That is not possible. Elias looked at it. At his father's face. At the imitation wearing everything he had lost. It is if I stop being understandable. The moment he said it, something inside him loosened. Not fear. Not pain. Identity. The listener surged harder. But instead of reaching for him, it slipped. Just slightly. Like a hand missing its grip. A sound rippled through the abyss. Confusion. For the first time, the thing beneath Appalachia could not categorize what it was witnessing. Elias pressed the knife against his palm. Blood fell, not onto stone, but into nothing. And where it touched the abyss, the void hesitated. Jeremiah gasped. It's reacting to you. Evelyn whispered, because he isn't speaking in it anymore. Daniel took a step back. You are not a language, it said slowly. Elias shook his head. No. He looked into the impossible depth below. I'm an interruption. The listener convulsed. The entire structure of the abyss shuddered violently, as if reality itself had encountered a contradiction too large to absorb. The church finally began collapsing in earnest. But it wasn't just falling. It was being forgotten. Walls dissolved into dust midair. Wood vanished into static like nothingness. Even sound started breaking apart. Jeremiah grabbed Evelyn. We need to. The silence didn't last the way silence is supposed to. It held. Too clean. Too deliberate. Elias noticed it first in the wind. It still moved through the trees, but it no longer carried anything. No echoes. No buried whispers. No half voices hiding in distance. Just air. Jeremiah stood slowly, still staring at the broken ridge where the church had been. It's really over? He asked again, quieter this time. Evelyn didn't answer right away. She was watching Elias. Not the mountain. Him. That depends, she said finally, on whether it learned enough before it went blind. Elias frowned. Blind. Evelyn stepped closer. When something like that loses its ability to interpret, it doesn't die the way we think of it. Her voice tightened. It becomes directionless. Jeremiah exhaled sharply. So it's still there. Evelyn nodded once. Somewhere beneath everything that remembers it. Elias tried to stand, but his legs felt wrong, like they weren't fully agreeing on what standing meant anymore. What did I do to it? He asked. Evelyn hesitated. Not destroy it. A pause. You made it stop recognizing itself through us. Jeremiah let out a bitter laugh. That sounds like destroying it with extra steps. Evelyn didn't respond. She was looking toward Black Hollow below the ridge. The town. Or what remained of it. Smoke still drifted through collapsed streets. Houses leaned at impossible angles. The earth had split open in long scars where tunnels had surfaced and then sealed again. But something was moving down there. Elias noticed it too. A flicker between buildings. A shape that looked almost human, then stopped looking like anything at all when he tried to focus on it. Jeremiah saw it and raised his rifle again instinctively. Evelyn stopped him. No. The shape didn't approach. It simply stood, watching upward. Elias felt something cold settle in his chest. It didn't leave, he said quietly. Evelyn shook her head. It can't leave. Jeremiah tightened his grip on the rifle. Then what is it doing? Evelyn answered softly, waiting to understand again. A long silence followed. Not the earlier kind. This one felt fragile, like something could break it just by noticing it too strongly. Elias looked down at his hands. They were shaking slightly. Not from fear. From absence. Something inside him felt unfinished. Like a word cut off mid-sentence that he couldn't remember how to complete. I can still hear it, he said suddenly. Jeremiah snapped toward him. Evelyn went still. Not voices, Elias added quickly. Not whistles. Just pressure. Evelyn stepped closer. Where? Elias closed his eyes. Deep beneath thought. Not sound. Not memory. Something like attention brushing against the edge of awareness. Far away. Lost. Searching. Jeremiah lowered his rifle slightly. You said it couldn't hear us anymore. Evelyn's expression darkened. It can't interpret, she corrected. That doesn't mean it stopped sensing patterns. Elias opened his eyes. So it's still trying. Evelyn nodded. Yes. A distant rumble rolled across the mountains, not thunder this time, but something deeper in the earth shifting into new positions. The ground beneath them gave a faint tremor. Jeremiah swore under his breath. Evelyn looked toward the horizon. It's spreading again, she said. Elias turned sharply. But you said it couldn't understand anymore. It can't understand us, she replied. A pause. But it can still try to understand everything else. Elias felt it then. Not inside his head. Outside. In the world itself. The way trees stood slightly too still. The way shadows didn't fully match their sources. The way distant parts of the forest seemed to hesitate before moving, like something was testing how reality responded. Jeremiah backed up slowly. What does that mean? Evelyn answered without looking at him. It means it will rebuild interpretation from whatever still responds to it. Elias's stomach tightened. So it learns again. Yes. A long silence stretched between them. Then Elias spoke. Can it reach people again? Evelyn hesitated. Yes. Jeremiah went pale. Then we didn't stop it at all. Evelyn finally looked away from the town and met Elias's eyes. No, she said quietly. We changed what it eats. The wind picked up slightly, but still carried nothing. Elias understood before she finished explaining. Not voices, not identity, not memory, not directly, but resonance. Anything that still reacted to its presence. Anything that still answered. Jeremiah lowered the rifle completely. So what now? He asked. Evelyn looked toward Elias. That depends on him. Elias frowned. Me. Evelyn nodded. You are still the only thing it failed to classify properly. A pause. And that makes you the only thing it will keep testing reality against. Jeremiah shook his head. That sounds like a target. Evelyn corrected him. No. Her voice softened. A reference point. Elias looked down at the valley again. The shape in Black Hollow was still there. Still watching. Still not understanding. And for the first time since everything began, it didn't feel like it was hunting. It felt like it was learning how to look. Elias whispered. So it's not done. Evelyn shook her head. No. A beat. Neither are you. The wind moved through the mountains again. This time, it carried something almost imperceptible. Not a whisper. Not a sound. Just the faintest suggestion of structure forming somewhere far below reality. Like something trying, very carefully, to begin thinking again.